not summoning for Evelyn, she might just scam your account, or maybe you might want to. So that's what we're going over in today's video, guys. All the reasons on why you should and or should not be summoning for Evelyn. We're going over a couple different things today, guys, starting off with her DPS, like just her kind of damage in general, her free-to-play viability, and then finally her versus 1.6 and ASTRA as well. So let's go ahead and hop into our first topic here, which is her DPS capabilities. And what I want to start off with is, obviously you can see it on screen here, which is going to be damage type. And what do I mean by damage type, guys? First of all, we already know she is a fire. This red looks really weird. It looks like shit red. I don't fucking know. And kind of the two things I want to talk about here, guys, is actually going to be our DPS count, meaning how many DPS are in the fire type. And then what I also want to talk about is the enemy count as well. How many enemies have the fire weakness or adjacent weaknesses as well that can maybe kind of play into this whole niche here. So let's go ahead and start off with our DPS count. First, starting off here, as we look at the DPS, what do we really have? We have Soldier 11, Evelyn, and Bernice. Now, the big thing to note here, guys, is I would consider Bernice more of a like sub DPS role, but we're just gonna put that here. 3 DPS in this whole niche right now. So that's really 3 options that you can have for any enemy that is weak to fire. Because I want to take account now of how many enemies are weak to fire, plus what damage type is adjacent to that fire. So if you notice here, guys, a lot of the enemies in the game are weak to also fire and physical. That's obviously not mutually exclusive, but most of the time whenever you see enemies with dual weaknesses like we see here, fire physical, fire physical, fire physical, then you have some enemies like this, the corrupted enemies, that are all weak to fire as well. As you can see, every single one of these enemies is weak to fire. And then we go back here, fire physical, fire physical, fire physical, fire physical, fire physical, fire, like literally, if there is a dual typing of like weakness in the game, it is the fire and physical. But the main thing I want to mention here, guys, is because this actually does open the door for any of these physical type DPS to also be used. So we're talking, we're increasing that pool from 3 to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's be honest, we're not using those 2 right there, but this does increase the pool quite a bit. If we're talking about genuine like meta tier characters, I would say Piper, Jane Doe here. And then for the other side, the fire side here, I would also say Evelyn's obviously gonna be here, Bernice is obviously gonna be here. So I'd say overall between the 2 types, we have 3 meta DPS. So these are the DPS like at the top of the tier list here. As you can see for fire, you know, meta, I guess she's technically meta, right? So maybe we'll add her to the list. We'll add Soldier to the Soldier 76 there to the list for now, right? Surely her name's Soldier 76, right? And then obviously for physical, we have 1, 2 as well there. So I mean, it is pretty good options in terms of DPS, because if we're talking about other type matchups, by the way, we're talking about Ether and then also Frost or slash Ice, right? So as far as Ether slash Frost goes, we have 1 Frost character there. We have 1 ice character there. That's 1, 2. If we go over to the ether category, that's 3. So obviously I think we do need more of these characters in the game, that being ice plus ether. And I do want to mention one thing here as well. This is kind of mutually exclusive in a way, which is actually the electrical typing. We'll touch more on this on my versus video, because I do have a versus video coming out with Evelyn versus the new anby coming to the game. And for the most part, guys, electric units are pretty mutually exclusive to their own for the most part, right? So like electric here, solo electric, a lot of electric weakness there, electric only. I think there's only 1 enemy in the game that's electric and ether. So they need to start adding more enemies in the game that can kind of pair up with that class, because as you see there, another ether electric. But for the most part, if the enemy is electric, they're probably only electric, and there is a lot of resistance here for electric as well. So this is kind of like their own DPS category. Now, I get they have the most DPS, but since they don't really have any other type of matchups right now, it kind of makes sense in a way that they have more, right? So I would say overall that this class here, genuinely, while it might not look like it on paper, I do think is probably the best class, or I guess I should say the most overabundance of characters for the content that we currently have in the game, considering we don't really have any good free-to-play option for any of these other roles. These are all pay-to-win options. Like, these are all like characters you have to summon for, but we have someone like Piper here, which is able to clear most of your physical content, which is literally going to clear basically all of your in-game content. So with this being said, guys, if you were looking for a good fire DPS in those mutually exclusive scenarios, I do think that she'll play pretty well there, right? Considering that Evelyn can play with both stun and supporter characters, you can basically pair her with any character in the game. But if you're being more conscious with the materials and content that we currently have in the game, I would say build Piper. That would be my best recommendation to you guys, because Piper is on a level right now that that it's kind of untouched by any other free-to-play thing other than Harumasa, which you actually need a lot of skill to play with Harumasa. So the next point I want to talk about, guys, is Eve versus current DPS versus future DPS. And what do I mean by this, guys? I think this is just from a pure damage perspective. I'm not even going to talk about how easy or hard it is to get the damage here, because I do think overall her damage is pretty easy to get. Her build is pretty easy, but we'll talk about that in the free-to-play viability section here in a second. But what I really want to touch on now, I'm just going to go back to the tier list just for reference here. Where do I think she's going to stack up on this tier list? I think that is the main point, right? I think, if we're being honest here, guys, I don't think she's stacking up with Miyabi. I think Miyabi is staying at the top of the roll here, and where I think she's going to fall is somewhere in this category right here. I don't think she goes down here. I think she'll probably be somewhere in this category. I think she'll be probably a little bit better than Julian, if I had to guess. But with that being said, guys, she is still worse than Miyabi, and in my opinion, is it really that important to pull this character? Because we all know Miyabi is the bar that's been set to power creep, so with that being said, I think that in terms of her versus future DPS, I think the future DPS, like even the DPS we're getting next patch with Silver Soldier Anby, will probably be stronger than what Evelyn already does. So that being said, guys, I'll put it right here. Miyabi is already better, and S rank Anby will probably be better as well. And the reason I say that as well, because Miyabi was touted as the Void Hunter, right? This is like the Emanators from Honkai Star Rail. She is supposed to be the creme de la creme. She is like the Acheron. She is like the Herta of the game, right? So she is supposed to be on the upper echelon. But if we're going in terms of lore, now, I don't think you can base everything off lore, but I do think you can base a lot off lore, because they've already made the Void Hunter the strongest character in the game. With DPS, I think we can assume, with Anby being like the second or third strongest character in the game lore-wise, I do think that Anby will clear what she's able to do. Also, I get that you have Harumasa, right, but you might be dog shit at the game. I think that Anby will probably be easier to play than Harumasa, but I do think she'll be harder to play than Miss Evelyn here. But that kind of leads us to Eve kind of just has an Ooga Booga kick, guys. Like, she just kind of Ooga Boogas it. Like, you literally just spam attack, and then you hold attack to get your charges up, your tethers, and then you keep rinsing and repeating. Now, I want to talk about the strength of chain/swap meta, because with Evelyn, we do see a shift in the meta just a tad bit, or playing more into a meta, right? With the release of someone like ASTRA, guys, we already know ASTRA's ultimate ability basically is giving you the ability to launch into 2 immediate chain attacks whenever you launch it off for your next 2 swap-ins, right? But what ASTRA also allows is the ability for quick swap as well. Now, that plays really well into what she's able to do. Like, her whole thing, her whole shtick is literally chain attacks. So if you're able to chain attack more often, that means you're going to do more damage. As you can see here, guys, her chain and ultimate attack damage is the main thing getting boosted here. So the more you can chain, the more damage you're able to get off, because that is the thing getting buffed. I do think that this plays into what the future meta might entail for us, right? Obviously, we don't have Anby in the game, the new Anby in the game. We don't know anything about her kit. We don't know anything about really the other girl's kit as well, the Breaker character. I forgot her name already. We don't know what their kits are yet. But if I had to guess, do I think it's going to be something off of the chain swap meta? Probably not. Now, why am I thinking that, right? Well, they're not in the same typing here, right? And I think they've kind of went into the full length here for this whole swap meta. And I think we've already seen it with like the likes of Miyabi, the likes of Yanagi playing into that swap meta really nicely. Where I think the game is going to go, I think ASTRA actually shows just within their kit as well, and that is a addition to off-field damage, or meaning we are getting more off-field type damaging things. So that's just me kind of coping out here. I do think the chain swap meta is going to be played pretty effectively into the future. Also, this does revitalize the use of Kaleda as well, which we're going to go ahead and talk about now, right? Because we're going to hop into this free-to-play viability section. Now, I kind of just want to hop into teams here first. Now, in terms of like what teams you can use, there are a couple different options. Let's start off with F2P first, right, guys? And that is going to be Koleda, Anby, Nicole, and Lucy. Now, the reason I put Koleda there, guys, is she is a standard 5-star character, meaning you can get her from the standard gacha pool. And by this time in the game, if you've been playing since day 1, you either have your guaranteed character you get from that, or you should be pretty much getting close to her, right? You might have lost a 50 as well, so you might also have her from that. But the big thing with Koleda here, guys, is she's actually going to be boosting the amount of damage you do from your chain attacks. And she actually gives quite a bit. She can give 2 stacks of 35% to your allies, so this is just going to be super nice for someone like Evelyn, right? She just constantly does chain attacks, so running Koleda on a team here, so they play really hand in hand with each other. I do think her free-to-play options are really nice, especially that being Anby, Nicole, Lucy, since she does play off of every single stunner/support character in the game. Obviously, we already know we have Lucy, another fire-type character, so if you had something on the team that was contingent on having a fire-type character on the team, that's the option for you. You have someone like Nicole, which inherently gives you extra quick assist to get on and off the field, and defense right as well. And then finally, you have Anby there for your breaker. So maybe if you want to go super uber free to play, you're running Anby, you're running the Cole in the team, and I think you have an absolutely amazing day there. I think that she absolutely clears for you. The build aspect, guys. The build for her is, oh my god, it's actually really easy. Now, the reason why it's easy, guys, is because she gives a free crit rate, right? And what I mean by free crit rate, she gives a fuck ton of free crit rate. She's going to give you 25% free crit rate. This is only level 6. It goes up by one more level, but 25% free crit rate from this, and also around like 19% free crit rate from this as well. So you're genuinely getting a lot of free crit rate there, and that's not even to mention like the crit requirements you need to hit. I kind of have it right here, guys. This is the crit rate that you need to activate her additional ability whenever you don't even run a main stat, right? Literally just 4 different pieces with a crit rate substat on them. That's all you need, and you'll be hitting 82% crit rate like that. And obviously, the more rolls you get, the bigger this number becomes. The max crit rate you need on her, guys, is 75% crit rate, which is honestly, when you can bring this number down, which I believe is any DPS's, unless you're anomalies, most important stat here, breaking that threshold down plus giving you more really gives you a lot of room to work with the rest of the kit, because the minimum requirement of crit rate you need is only 52% to get to that 80% threshold that you need. Like, look at this, guys. This is the margin you have to reach between. So you're not, this is not 100, this is a very reasonable amount to get. So overall, her build is really easy. It's really flexible as well. I do have a full build guide out on the channel already, so if you want to go watch that, make sure you go watch that video. But yeah, very easy build. I do think this is going to be very free-to-play friendly, so I give this an absolute win. I think if you're looking for an easy build for free-to-play player, that's going to be really good. Now, future-proof ability is something that I don't think that she has a lot of it. Now, the reason I don't think she has a lot of it, while I do think her build's really easy, while I do think she has a lot of free-to-play teams, and while I do think she'll probably inherently have more teams in the future that she can be ran on, what is her role if not for a main DPS, right? That's how I see her. If she's not being a main DPS, I don't see her really slotting as a sub DPS, because her whole main thing is doing chain attacks. So you get on the field, you do her chain attacks by using a lot of her basics and a lot of her skills and stuff like that to launch them off, but she doesn't do any off-field damage. So I don't see her being a good sub DPS here. So for me, that kind of like knocks her out of the equation of being that future-proofable. And on top of this, guys, like we mentioned before, she's already below miyabi on the tier list here. She's already below miyabi's damage output, so it's just that much easier for her to get power creep. But there's nothing, I guess you could say, unique that she does other than a chain attack from a hold down that would really benefit any type of other thing, right? She doesn't put debuffs on the enemy, so it's not like a situation. The best way I can relate this to is like Honkai Starrel. She's not a Topaz, right? Whereas Topaz is probably not the best like main DPS in the game. She can act as a sub DPS, right? Fei Xiao can even act as a sub DPS because she has something unique in her kit. I really don't think Evelyn has that uniqueness in her kit. I do think she's easy to play, don't get me wrong, but I don't think she has that uniqueness in her kit. I don't think she's going to be future-proofing your account that much. I think she'll clear the content for the next 6 months. I do think she'll probably start to fall off after that, but that just depends on the rate of power creep they continue going with. If it's the current rate, then she's getting past in 6 months from now easily. Easily 6 months from now, she gets power crept, and then it starts getting harder for her to clear content. With that being said, guys, overall, I do think this is a pretty big win for free-to-play players, and if you're a free-to-play player looking for a new character, maybe you're just starting the game out, I do think she'll overall be really good for your account, because she, like I said, she has a lot of team options, her build's super easy, and she's very ooga booga brain, as we said over here, to play as well. So this is going to be super good all around here, and I do think she's very free-to-play viable. Now, 1.6 versus ASTRA. Don't look at that, guys. We have another video coming for that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. 1.6 in ASTRA versus Evelyn. I'll be going over more of this obviously in the next video that we just kind of teased there. But with that being said, I wrote down a couple things here, guys. Obviously, we don't know too much that I can really speak on at this time for these two characters. We'll go into more detail in the next video, like I said. But with this right here, guys, we already know that she gets free crit rate. She's a fire type character, meaning she puts in with fire type physical scenarios. And then also she works with any breaker plus any support. And then finally, she's a DPS character, which is just inherently prone to more power creep. When we compare that to someone like ASTRA, right? I think ASTRA is a clear victor on like who you should be pulling. Like if you're watching this video right now and you couldn't decide between ASTRA Yao and this, ASTRA Yao, first of all, a support character, which inherently is a lot harder to power creep because they don't release as many of them. As you can see, most of the characters we've gotten in the game have been DPS characters. This is our first support type character we've gotten in the game of the actual support class, and you can tell from what she does. She gives free crit damage, she gives free damage, she gives heal, she gives attack percentage. She literally works with any DPS, so that means any DPS in the future, she will work with. Also, she's gonna be offering a heal tier team as well. Like again, we're comparing apples to oranges. This is a DPS versus a fucking support character, but overall, I do think in terms of value, you get much more here. Now let's go ahead and talk about her. I do think she'll be harder to play. So if I think you're trying to be more Ooga Booga Brain, I think that Evelyn's a better option for you. She is electric, so I do think she kind of sits like on her own island here with just electric type enemies, whereas with the other thing that she has, which is fire plus physical, they have two different typings that kind of help them out with the damage typing, whereas electric really only has one in the game right now. Could change obviously, but that's just kind of how it is right now. And then finally, guys, probably stronger. Like lore wise, she's stronger than her. So, I mean, yeah, I think that's a big up. Also, I think she's a more hype for character, and I don't think they would put a more hype for character weaker than her, because why would you put a more hype for character weaker than your character you just had that really wasn't as hyped for? I think ASTRA was more hyped than Evelyn, so that can be said there. And then finally, another breaker. Guys, honestly, this is probably going to be a power creep to Chingy, because how I see the tier list right now, guys, for this is genuinely, I do think Lighter is like down here. I think everyone kind of moves down a tier. I think Lighter's right here in terms of his breaking capability, but I do think this new character will probably be sitting up right about here with Chingy, or maybe even a little bit better. So overall, I do think she'll also probably be better for your account as well. So with that being said, should you pull for Evelyn? I don't think so. I think there are some scenarios where it would be good to pull for Evelyn for your account. I do think she can work if you're a free-play player or just a new player coming to the game in general. I do think she'll help your account a lot. Like, you don't really need much skill to play with her. I don't think her skill ceiling's that high compared to someone like an Anby, which is coming out next. But with that being said, I do think most of the DPS scenarios that we're in right now, you could just build Piper instead and be completely fine with beating all the in-game content with Piper versus having to learn and adjust to someone like Harumasa, because Harumasa, I think, is still free in the game right now. I think he's free to 1.7, right? So, like, you have access to another Harumasa, but he's a lot harder to play. Would you rather have, like, easier plus a little bit easier than Harumasa to play? Or would you rather have Evelyn, which is easy to play, and then super hard, which is Harumasa here? So it's really going to depend on your level of sweat and how much sweat you want to put into the game. I do think if you pull for her, you'll probably have to end up sweating more, especially if you don't have another electric type DPS to deal with electric type scenarios. That's how I kind of see it, guys. I don't think she's a must pull by any means. I think she is good. I think she'll sit near the top of the tier list for now. I think she's very easily and very susceptible to power creep though, and I don't think she'll be up in the meta for really that long. Anyways, that's gonna do it for today's video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. Are you pulling for Evelyn or are you skipping? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anyways, guys, see you later. Bye-bye.